Hey everybody, how's it going? Today we're going to be going over and showing you how to install the Stealth Hitches hidden rack receiver here on a 2022 Hyundai Palisade. So this is what our trailer hitch is going to look like installed on our vehicle when we're not towing or not carrying those accessories. And as you'll see, it is a completely hidden installation. We don't have anything hanging down below the bumper. So when we are ready to tow or haul, we're going to go ahead and insert one of our two receivers here. So we have the rack receiver. This is going to be used for bike racks and cargo carriers. And then we have our ball mount over here, which is obviously going to be used for towing. Now they're both going to install the same way, but we're basically just going to make sure your latching mechanism is open and locked. Then you're just going to line up the knob here with the latch receiver, press up until it locks into place. In order to prevent theft, we can actually lock either our rack receiver or our ball mount to the vehicle here using one of the two keys that come in your kit. The lock core is going to be located over here on the driver's side. So there's a rubber cap on that lock. You'll go ahead and remove that. And to lock it, you pretty much just push the plunger down and it auto locks. But to unlock it, you actually will need the key for this. You just insert it and then turn, and then the plunger should open up. Now we could actually go ahead and remove it by turning the lever on the other side. So as you can see there, it is very easy to install and remove from the vehicle. So when you're not using the receiver, you want to make sure that you go ahead and plug it with this rubber cap to keep out any contaminants. So in regards to weight capacity, our towing kit is going to allow for a 6,000 pound gross trailer weight trailer to be carried, and it's going to have a 600 pound tongue weight rating on the rack receiver. So those are going to be plenty for most of the trailers or accessories that you want to carry. Keep in mind, these are specific to the hitch, which is actually tested separately of the vehicle. Therefore, you do need to verify your capacity in the owner's manual of the vehicle and abide by the lower of the two rated components, whether that's the hitch or the vehicle. Now the great thing about this towing kit is that it's an all-inclusive kit, meaning we're going to get everything that we need in order to successfully hook up to and tow a trailer. So in addition to the trailer hitch, we're going to get our ball mount and hitch ball, and we're also going to get our wiring. So what our wiring does is, it's simply put, it's going to transfer the signals from the vehicle to the trailer so we can let other motorists out on the road know what signals are going to be making, allowing us to arrive to our destination safe and sound. Now this is not only a safety issue, it is a legal requirement in every state. So if we look back here hidden behind the bumper, you're going to see an industry standard 7-way trailer connector. So this is going to be used on those larger trailers with electric brakes and an onboard battery. But if you guys just have a smaller trailer that just has basic lighting functions and only requires the 4-way, you'll go ahead and use this adapter that comes in your kit, simply plugs into the 7-way, and then it'll allow you to attach a 4-way. So that's the 4-way at the bottom, and again, the 4-way is just going to be for those basic trailer lighting functions such as the stop and turn signal circuits for either side and the running lights. Now in regards to the installation of all of our components, the hitch is actually pretty easy. There's no modifying to the vehicle whatsoever, and it's just basic common hand tools. You will need a torque wrench, and if you don't have one, you can actually rent this for free from most local auto parts stores. But aside from that, I would say someone with little to no mechanical experience can definitely still install this hitch at home in their driveway in around an hour depending on your experience level. As far as the wiring goes, it's going to be equally as easy, and thankfully everything is going to plug into a tow package plug here on the vehicle, which is going to make sure you don't have any issues with the trailer affecting your lights on the vehicle. And best of all, we're going to walk you through this entire process step by step now to give you guys the confidence to install it at home by yourself. So the first step of our installation today, we need to open up the hatch on our vehicle here, come inside to the rear cargo area, lift open your floor covering because we need to reveal the plug that's going to access the winch for our spare tire, because we do need to lower our spare tire out from the vehicle temporarily. So we're inside the rear cargo tray here. We're first going to start by taking a flathead screwdriver and removing this plug. Once we do that, we're going to take a 21mm socket and lower this winch here for your spare tire. Now if you don't have a 21mm socket, the tools you're going to need to lower this are actually located inside this rear cargo area as well. Next, we're going to come underneath the vehicle over here on the driver's side. You're going to see this gravel guard located directly behind our rear wheel. This is what it looks like. We need to go ahead and remove it. So there's going to be a couple push pin fasteners on the bottom here, and there's a couple plastic nuts on the top which will remove with a 14mm socket. But first we're going to go ahead and start with these push pin fasteners here. They're pretty easy to get out. Just use either a flathead screwdriver or a trim panel tool to pry out the center section, and the rest of it will come with it. And once we get those all out, We're just going to take a 14mm socket. Chances are you don't even need a ratchet for this. You can just turn them by hand, but we're just going to loosen those up. And then once we get everything nice and loose here, all of our fasteners removed, we should just be able to pull the panel down and out. Next we'll be lowering our exhaust. So before we do that, we want to take some sort of support device. We're just going to be using a cam buckle strap. I'm going to hook it on to 2 points on the frame here. And then I'm going to pull it tight. And basically, once we remove the hangers from our exhaust, this is going to provide support for our exhaust pipe here so it doesn't fall too far down and cause any damage. Now over here on the passenger side, we have our muffler. So this is going to be held onto the body of the vehicle with 2 hangers, one up top here, and then one on the back side. We're going to spray those down with the spray lubricant first. That's going to make removal a lot easier. Now we're going to take either a metal hanger or an exhaust hanger removal tool. We'll be removing the hanger from the isolator. So there's one. Now we have one on the back side of the muffler as well. So next we need to come to the bottom of the frame on either side here. You're going to see the 2 threaded holes. So we need to go ahead and clean these out. In order to do that, we're going to take a spray lubricant, spray them in there, and then come back with a wire brush, run that through there. Basically we're just getting out any of the contaminants. And once we have them clean, we'll take one of our hardware bolts here. Just go ahead and thread that into the hole. Make sure it threads in nice and smooth. If it does, no further cleaning is needed. If it doesn't, that's when you want to come back and repeat this process. So for our next step, we need to go ahead and assemble our trailer hitch. So it's actually going to come in 3 different pieces. We have our center section here, this section over here which goes to the driver's side, and this one goes to the passenger side. So it's pretty easy to put together. There's only 4 bolts per side. We're going to be using the 3/8 bolts that come in your kit along with these flange nuts. So go ahead and just install all the hardware on those and then torque them down to the specification they list. So we're just about ready to lift our hitch into position on the vehicle. We are going to go ahead and grab a friend for this because it's going to make it a lot easier. But before we do that, I just want to briefly go over the hardware with you. So we're going to be securing it first with the 2 bolts that run inside the frame rail at the very top. So we're going to use these 1/2" bolts here. We're going to make sure we have a flat washer on them, and we're going to be placing them from the inside going out. So that's what we're going to use to hold the hitch up. And again, there's going to be 4 of these total, both at the top going through the frame rail. And then on the bottom of the frame, you remember the weld nuts that we cleaned out earlier. This is where we're going to install these M10 hex bolts. So there's 2 on each side. We need to place a split lock washer over there, followed up by a flat washer. So now with an extra set of hands, we'll go ahead and install our hitch on the vehicle. You do have to come up and over the exhaust on the passenger side first. So if you guys are like me, you're probably going to struggle putting this bolt all the way through. This is over here on the driver's side, the bolt closest to the front of the vehicle. And that's because we have some sort of little retainer coming down from the body. So in which case, we're just going to take a hammer here. I'm just going to hit it past that little retainer. Looks like we did clip a little bit off there, but that's totally fine. That's not going to affect anything. So another point you may struggle with is over here on the passenger side. This heat shield here kind of interferes with our bolts going through all the way. So what I did is I took an extension there with the hammer, and I just used that to tap the bolt the rest of the way through the hole there. So it is going to bind a little bit there on the heat shield, but you're just going to be able to sneak it past there. You can see a little bit of scraping, but again, it's not going to damage the vehicle at all. It's just a little trick to help you get the bolts in. Now once we have our bolts all the way through, we're going to come back with a flat washer on the outside, and then loosely thread on one of our nylock nuts. So we're going to do this for all 4 of our 1/2" bolts at the top there. So now that we have our side bolts in that run through the frame, we're going to begin installing the bolts on the bottom there. And they're going to be these M10 fasteners we pointed out earlier. So we'll just go ahead and get those started. So now that we have all of our hardware in place, we'll go ahead and snug everything down before we torque it to the specifications or instructions. We're going to start with these 2 bolts on the bottom using a 17mm socket. For our bolts on the top there, we're going to need a 3/4 inch socket and 3/4 inch wrench. So next we're going to be installing our latching block here. So the latching block is just going to simply go into the receiver there. You're going to line up the 2 holes on either side. It's just going to be inserted up there like so. But what we want to make sure is that the handle is on the passenger side and the lock is on the driver's side. We also have some other brackets we need to attach. Our safety chain loop brackets. So these kind of have to maneuver around the latching mechanism to get them to go into place. And we also want to make sure this oval hole is facing the rear here. And then on the passenger side, we also have our electrical connector bracket that needs to be inserted through there as well. So what I found the easiest to do is just insert these 2 bolts in there to start out with, and then we'll back them out slightly, lift it up into place, and shove everything together. So you kind of need 3 hands to do this all correctly. It is kind of challenging to get everything lined up here. We got one side in. I'm just going to rotate it so we can get the other one. There we go. Now for our other side here, we're going to be doing that same thing. Again, making sure the oval hole is facing towards the front of the vehicle. But this one's a little bit easier. It's just going to slide right over there. And then we're just going to simply thread on our nylock nuts. Now I'll come back with our torque wrench here and torque everything down to the specification listed in your instructions. You're going to need a 15/16 inch wrench and socket for this. So we've got our latching block secure. Now we're going to move on to our wiring. So our wiring is going to take place on the driver's side of the vehicle. If you guys remember that gravel panel that we removed earlier, we're actually going to be working just directly behind that. So if we take a look up above there, you should see this connector here. This is for the factory tow package. So I'm going to take a razor knife there and I'm going to carefully cut that electrical tape away so I can bring the plug down and work with it a little bit better. Now once we do that, there's actually a dummy plug or a cap, whatever you want to call it, attached to the end of that. Simply pinch down and pull out to reveal the connector. So now we're going to take our wiring harness that comes in our kit here, and it should have an end which matches this end, so I'm sure you guys have guessed it, we're just going to plug the 2 in together. Now you will hear it click when it's locked into place. Next we're going to be securing our converter box here. So in your kit you're going to get a double-sided pad. We're going to attach that to the back of the converter box. Peel off the other side there if you can get the 2 separated. And then we're just going to stick it to a nice flat surface up in here. Now I'm going to be sticking it here to this bottom little pinch mold because I'm going to be using an additional method of security as well via a self tapper which comes in your kit. So we just put the self tapper there on the end of a bit driver, and now I'm going to drill it through the body. So there we go. This is again just going to provide an extra measure of security here in case anything were to happen with that tape and it fell down. We still have the screw to hold our converter box. So now you're going to see we have all kinds of wiring dangling down here. Some of this we're going to secure up to some existing wiring to keep it out of the way. Now to explain this a little bit better, so you're going to have 2 other sections of your wiring left. So the wiring that's multiple, I don't know, there's like 5 or 6 wires in there that has that little loom on there. So we're going to be routing this over to where the receiver tube opening is. We're going to be securing it to the hitch. If you remember that electrical bracket that we showed you earlier, it's actually going to be tied into that. We'll show you that in a moment, but I want to focus on these 2 wires for now. So you're going to have a blue and a purple wire in the same bundle here, and they're actually branched off separately from our main harness. So these 2 wires may or may not be hooked up depending on what you're actually going to be using this wiring harness for. So if you have a trailer with electric brakes and that's the reason you're installing this, you're going to need to run this blue wire into the cab of the vehicle and hook it up to your brake controller, assuming you're using a wired brake controller. If you're using a wireless, then this wouldn't actually be used. Now our purple wire is going to be for trailers, mostly boat trailers that have a reverse lockout actuator. This is actually going to be spliced into the reverse light circuit on your vehicle, so you'll have to run this up there behind the taillights and tap into one of those wires that dictates your reverse light circuit, because that's more often than not going to release the actuator, allow you to back up. This particular vehicle though, however, they're just going to be utilizing the standard 4-way and the 7-way without the electric brake function, so these 2 wires we're just going to tape up and tie off with the rest of them back behind that panel here. So before I tie up all this existing wiring using the zip ties that come in your kit, I'm going to actually take some electrical tape and just cover these 2 wires there, because I can see the inside of the wire, so I wouldn't want any water to get in there causing any issues with our converter. So just as a precautionary measure, I'm going to go ahead and take some electrical tape and tie these up. And again, if you guys need to hook these up, then this is obviously going to vary a little bit for your exact application. But now, as we said, I'm just going to tie up all this loose wire back to some existing wiring here. So this is what everything looks like cleaned up here. You can see I just have some of the zip ties in our kit securing our existing wiring. And then I'm going to take that main harness up and over this little bumper beam flange, have it zip tied here, underneath the receiver tube here, have another one of our large zip ties securing it, and this is where the wire comes down at. We'll be attaching it here in a moment to the trailer connector, which gets mounted to this bracket here. So next we're going to begin installing the trailer connector. So we're going to grab this bracket here that comes in your kit, and we're actually going to be mounting this to the bracket that we installed on the latching block earlier. So this is actually going to be pointed down and offset towards the front of the vehicle. So we're just going to go ahead and attach it like that using the hardware that comes in your little hardware bag. It's these small screws. So go ahead and place one of those on there and then secure it with one of our flange nuts. Next, I'll just take my Phillips head bit here and I'll go ahead and snug up those two screws. Now here's our trailer connector we're going to be installing next. We're going to start by removing these two screws on the outside. So these are just Phillips head screws. Now once we get these out, we're going to open up the lid. You may need to push it out the other end. This little terminal block should come right out. So next we're going to be installing the trailer connector onto that bracket that we showed you previously. So it just mounts up like so. Pretty easy installation. And in your kit you're going to get the hardware, same hardware that we used to attach these two brackets. Next I'm going to take our wiring harness here that we routed over earlier, and I'm going to stick it down through the back side of that trailer connector. And I'm going to pull them out the lid just like so. So next we're going to begin stripping the jacket off each of these wires and attaching them to our terminal block here at the rear. Now the process is going to be the same for each of these. We'll just go ahead and show you one. You want to make sure that you reference the diagram in your instructions. Don't go by the printing on the back side of this. So we're going to start out with the purple wire, which is going to be attached to that center terminal here. Just go ahead and twist the wire strand there so you don't get any frays. You'll loosen the screw from this little block here, stick the wire in, and then tighten it down to lock it in place. So once we get this one done, we're just going to repeat the same process for our other wires. So after you make all of your connections, just go ahead and slide the little terminal block up inside the housing there. Now there is a keyway, so it's only going to go one way, and then you'll just secure it with the two screws on the side. And I'm also going to snug up this screw on the top there just to hold our wire in place and form a nice watertight seal. So now we'll go ahead and take our panel here, this gravel guard that we removed previously, and we'll just go ahead and reinstall it on the vehicle. So now that we have our gravel guard back in place, now all that's left to do is just raise your spare tire back up into position, and then we'll go ahead and test out our wiring to make sure everything's working properly. So now we're going to go ahead and check all of our lighting circuits. So we're going to be using this plug-in 7-way tester that we have here at eTrailer. You guys could obviously just use your trailer. Now keep in mind, if there's any issues with the trailer, they will carry over to your testing on the vehicle. But you can already see we have our 12-volt circuit active, so that's going to be for the battery charge line. We're going to go ahead and step on our brakes now, test those, all good. Left turn, right turn, and then finally our running lights. So there we go, now we know everything is hooked up and working correctly. So now with everything hooked up and working correctly, that's going to do it today for our look and installation of the Stealth Hitches Hidden Rack Receiver with Towing Kit here on a 2022 Hyundai Palisade.